happy to be amongst the states that will participate in this e-debate in Benue State. My name is Sunday Job Chundusu, team coach of Plateau State. I have trained my students or my debaters to work very well in order to claim this debate in terms of content, strategy, and style. And they should know that debate is a team game. We are all together in the spirit, and by the grace of God, Plateau State is going to claim this cup by the grace of God.
Hi everyone, my name is Ndam Jacob, and with me are
Nicole Dalu and Ian Michelle.
We are here to represent the Plateau State team in the 2024 nationwide e-debate. My past experience was the winning of the President School Debate competition held at the nation capital, Abuja, in 2021, and also representing the state in numerous debates held at various levels of government. The first thing I felt when choosing to represent Plateau State was honored because I was chosen from among many debaters in the state. Our expectation at the end of this debate is to win as we have always won, and to bring back the trophy to just the capital city of the state. To my points in full, democracy is not the best form of government because of the following valid points. To start with, democracy focuses on the majority rule, which most of the times causes frustration to the public, as the majority rule is not usually the best interest of the public. In Nigeria, for instance, the majority rule has removed fuel subsidy, which does not interest the people, as fuel is now expensive, leading to high cost of virtually everything in the society today. Again, democracy as a form of government is not the best because it destabilizes leadership. It conducts elections to change leaders termly. Most of the times, these leaders need time to settle down before the commencement of their duties. The time they need to settle down will lead to a break, definitely in leadership. Furthermore, democracy as a system of government is not the best because it takes opinion of the working class superior to that of the public. Hence, it gives priority to the voice of the elected representatives, not to whom power constitutionally belongs to. Members of the House, democracy as a system of government is not the best because it rules in favor of the majority without checking and balancing the interests of the majority with the needs of the country before making laws. Democracy as a system of government is not the best because it lacks accountability and transparency. These are the major issues associated with democracy, as the elected leaders turn up to represent their own selfish interests, not the interests of the people, because no one dare questions their collective decision. Democracy as a system of government leads to a delay in decision making, as it allows different and numerous representatives to be voted into government, and all of these representatives have to be consulted before a decision could be reached. Such long process most of the times causes frustration to the public. In Nigeria, for instance, the newly approved minimum wage, which could have helped better the life of many Nigerians, but the delay in deciding when to pay keeps Nigerians in a more frustrating situation. There are workers in this house. Or am I lying? Definitely not. Democracy as a system of government is not the best because it's expensive to operate. The allowances and salaries of the numerous representatives can be as well used to tackle the challenges of the country, treat to the growth of the nation. Democracy as a system of government is not the best because it is expensive to operate, as I have earlier stated. Members of the House, we in Nigeria have practiced democracy and it has failed us. It is high time we change our form of government in order to reach that Nigeria of our dreams, in which all of us are looking and aspiring forward. Democracy as a system of government is not the best because it lacks the proper representation of the interest of the public. Most of the decisions made today in Nigeria as a democratic state does not reflect the interest of the people, but rather the interest of the few privileged, selfish politicians we call our leaders. Members of the House, have you ever seen a farmer who planted maize and harvested rice? Have you ever seen a farmer who planted guinea corn and harvested millet? Or have you ever in your entire lifetime had the story of a farmer that planted millet and harvested mango. As the saying goes, you can only force a horse to a river, but you can never force that horse to drink water. So, it's applicable to this motion at hand. You can't expect a child who has been negatively raised towards education to perform better than that who has been positively raised. Franklin D. Roosevelt once said, and I quote, "Peace, like charity, begin at home." The charming panel of impartial educators, members of the House, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, humbly standing before you is Ndam Jacob from the Government Model Secondary School Ndam, the lead speaker in the Plateau State team. Here to read the points I have to affirm the motion. This House believes that is the home and not the school that should be held responsible for the moral laxity and poor academic performance of students. But before I set the ball rolling to satisfaction, permit me to do justice to the key terms in the motion. Home, as defined by the Oxford English Dictionary, 3rd edition 2020 online, as a place where one permanently live, especially as a member of a family or household. School, on the other hand, is an institution that imparts knowledge on a certain discipline. Moral laxity is when someone is not strict enough to maintain his or her own moral standard in a community, whereas academic performance, on the other hand, generally entails how students perform academically. Distinguished panelists, is it the school that equips students with all they need to start life after secondary school that should be held responsible? Is it the school that makes sure it produces future-ready leaders that defend the integrity of Nigeria that should be held responsible? Is it the school that is guided by strict rules and regulations that regulate its procedures that should be held responsible? Definitely not. To start with, parental influence. While the school may contribute to the moral laxity and poor education performance of students, the primary responsibility, the essential responsibility, the crucial and the most vital responsibility lies in the home. Schools can only contribute, schools can only support, but they cannot change the fundamental foundation which has been
Point
laid.
of information, sir.
No, thank you. But they cannot change the fundamental foundation which has been laid by the home. Therefore, the home at all times should be held responsible. Parental influence today, has consistently shown us that it is one of the best indicators of students' academic performance. That means how a parent or how parents train the children entails a lot in how they will perform both academically and morally. A research by the National Education Association in Nigeria revealed that parents who are involved in the students' academic activities tends to perform better, 63% better than those whose parents are not involved. Therefore, the parents place a crucial responsibility and assure that they should be held accountable, not the school. The home environment in which students live matters a lot. We live in a society today whereby parents have zero or no regard to what their children do. Parents today, instead of paying attention, no thank you. Parents today, instead of paying attention to what their children do academically, end up paying attention on how they will get rich. End up paying attention on how to improve the standard of living, leaving the students' academic out of their agenda. And you expect such students to perform well? Moreover, parental accountability and transparency matters a lot. Parental involvement, such as helping with assignments, communicating with teachers, as well as setting educational goals, determines and is directly linked to better educational outcomes. But in a scenario and in a situation whereby parents neglect all this, how do you expect such a student to perform better? Mr. Kolawole was a parent. He assaulted a teacher, Miss Grace Ogri, in Rosebud Private School in Lagos on the 10th of October this year. And this assault, the worst of it was in front of her students, just because the teacher corrected his child. What do this type of parents show their children? Is it the fact that assaulting a teacher before your child will solve the problem? Definitely not. Parents at all times should be held responsible. The home at all times should be held accountable for the moral laxity and poor educational performance of their students. Research and statistics show that you don't expect a child that goes to school with an empty stomach to perform better than that who ate before going to class. don't dare expect a child that is not being brought up well by his parents to be morally and academically standard than that who has been brought up positively by his parents. I am sure my opponents here will argue that because the students spend most of their time with the teachers in the school, therefore the school should be held responsible. But that is not true. It is what they have been taught at home. It is the foundation that has been laid by their parents to them that determine how they stay even in school with the teachers. Examination malpractice is one of the cankerworm that has been eroding the educational system today in Nigeria. My opponents will argue that this examination malpractice is caused by students. It's caused by the school. However, it is not, because it is some parents that go in search of what they call miracle passing centers to help their students pass examination without tears. Who then should be blamed? Is it the home or the school? Definitely, the home should be blamed. What's your view?
Creating existing inequalities by assigning sole responsibility to homes.
Distinguished panelists, I wonder why my opponents will be asking questions that I did not mention.
For clarification.
However, no, thank you. However, students who have been brought up well by their parents, students who receive thorough foundation will never and ever lack morals and academic performance. We live in a world today whereby children are not being cared of. You will live in a world today whereby parents regard their children with zero negligence. Members of the house, I have a friend, Franklin. His father usually goes to work without caring and minding what this child does at home. Instead, Franklin spends most of his time learning pornographical, immoral, and nudity acts, which today, as I am speaking to you, Franklin is now an armed robber. This entails that the parent has sponsored this boy. This entails that the parents supported this boy into becoming an armed robber just to cater for the financial needs of the family.
Pure speaker.
No, thank you. I believe with this, as I can see my opponents and even the judges nodding their heads in agreement that it is indeed the home and not the school that should be held responsible for the moral laxity and poor educational performance of students. I'll leave you with the words of Reverend Father Peter Imaji. He once said, and I quote, "If students vacate from school to home, the home sees the school in them. If they come back from home to school, the school sees the home in them. It therefore depends on how the foundation is laid." Thanks, and believe this valid truth. Let the motion stand. The lead speaker in the proposition team managed to argue that floating the Nigeria is the reason, that floating the currency of Nigeria is the reason of Nigeria's economic woes. He kept on comparing Nigeria with other countries, which is not the context of our motion. We are talking the reality in Nigeria, not India, not other countries he mentioned. He also mentioned about vulnerability of the Naira. But I'd like to tell this house that it is through the overdependence of the Nigerian government to the oil sector. That is why it leads Nigeria to price vulnerability in the international oil market. Members of the house, floating the Naira is not the primary issue. Neither it is the essential cause of Nigeria's economic woes. Instead, it is a strategy. It is a symptom of deeper structural issues in the country. Humbly standing before his Ndam Jacob, the lead speaker in the Plateau State team, here to redeem the points I have to negate the proposition. This house believes that floating the Naira is the reason of Nigeria's economic woes. But before I hit the nail on his head, permit me to explain and at the same time do justice to the key terms in our motion. Floating the Naira, also known as managed float, is when a country allows its market forces to determine the exchange value of its currency. Economic woes, on the other hand, is when the standard of the economy of a particular country is being decreased or degraded. This most of the times is compounded with overdependence on the oil and gas sector, as well as price volatility. This is compounded with the poor agricultural system a country has. This is compounded with the poor educational system, unstable political system, climate change, and environmental degradation. We, the Negative Constructive team, will present 18 strong, crucial, and vibrant points to the House. I, as the lead speaker, will be extensively and exclusively deliberating on the first 6. The first supporter will extensively deliberate on the next 6, while my debunker will persuasively deliberate on the last 6, and she will at the same time debunk, build, contract, and condemn erroneous, baseless, and in fact true concepts, which I am very sure my opponent must raise in the course of this argument. She is going to do that by providing the House with statistics, scenarios, references, as well as valid examples to back up the claim of the negating team. Members of the House, when Nigeria as a country has overdepended on the oil and gas sector, making its economy to stand at a risk if there is failure in the oil and gas sector, do you still say that floating the Nigerian naira is the cause? When Nigeria as a country lack to invest in the educational sector, thereby not being able to produce good economies to manage the country's economy, you still say that floating the naira is the cause? When Nigeria as a country suddenly forgot that the agricultural system was once the major source of government revenue and therefore failed to invest in it, do you still say that floating the naira is the cause? To start with, overdependent on the oil and gas sector. Nigeria today overdepend on the oil and gas sector, thereby making the Nigerian government to stand at a risk if there is failure in the oil and gas sector, because this would destroy Nigeria's economy entirely. Do you know that the oil and gas sector accounts for over 90% of the federal government's export revenue, and at the same time it accounts for over 60% of the government revenue? No, thank you, I will get back to you. The COVID-19 pandemic, however, has witnessed a backslide in the oil and gas sector, as gas no longer move, businesses no longer hold, and the oil and gas sector were not able to sell fuel to the international market. This reduced the gross domestic product of Nigeria from 74.6% to 23.1% in just 3 months. Members of the House, the poor agricultural system, the weak agricultural system we have in Nigeria should not also be left out of this motion. Nigerian government tends to forget so easily that the agricultural system was once the major source of income. It will interest you to know that the government today spends more than $10 billion annually on the importation of food. These, however, make Nigerians to stand vulnerable at the international market when there are shifts or changes in policy on the importation of food. Many of our farmers, many of the implements they use, many of the machineries they use are outdated and does not conform international standard. This, however, increase the rate of poverty, decrease the standard of living, and affect the national economy. Do you know that the federal government of Nigeria allocated only 7% in the 2020 budget, which is not even up to the 0.5% as recommended by the United Nations Educational and Cultural and Scientific Organization, that is UNESCO. UNESCO recommended 15 to 21%. This has made the Nigerian educational sector not been able to equip schools with better learning materials, better infrastructural learning materials in order to train and produce good economies that will manage the nation's economy. Again, the unstable political system we are having in Nigeria should not be overemphasized in this motion today. All of us seated here will bear me witness that since after independence, most of the leaders, most of the elected representatives that represented Nigeria in the government were corrupt. 74.6% of the money allocated to eradicating poverty is being diverted into private pockets. The case of the recent suspension of Nigeria's Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Dr. Beta Edu, is a clean example to this fact. She is said to have used a private account number in the ministry's financial transactions for the government social welfare, which is worth more than 585.2 million naira. Members of the House, if this huge sum of money will be tackled at eradicating poverty, don't you think that the Nigeria's economic sector will experience rapid growth? Definitely. Floating the naira is not and will never be the significant cause of Nigeria's economic sector. Again, the climate change and environmental degradation should also be considered. Environmental degradation such as desertification, erosion, pollution, flooding, as well as oil spillage in the Niger Delta led to the massive destruction of farmlands, led to the massive destruction of residential areas, led to the massive destruction of lives and properties, which has increased the rate of poverty, decreased the standard of living, and affect the national economy negatively. Distinguished panelists, members of the House, the policy change or the policy change decision is more of a necessary move in order to adjust to the current realities and changes in the global market. Therefore, floating the naira should be seen as an adjustment strategy rather than the root cause of Nigeria's economic woes, rather than the root cause of Nigeria's economic struggles. With this, let the motion fall. Thanks and believe this valid truth. Panel, it seems that the lead speaker in the proposition team doesn't know what she is doing. She came to the stage and defined poverty as the lack or inability of people to put food on their table. If people cannot put food on their table, then tell me, how can such people think of committing crime? She said unemployment. Is unemployment under poverty? Definitely, a poor man cannot afford to send his child to school. Therefore, we don't expect such a child to be employed. Members of the House, even among all the poor people in the world, there is still a strong tendency of some to commit crime and some to strongly oppose crime. It therefore depends. Again, if poverty, as we say, is the root cause of crime in the society, why then is the variation? Although poverty may contribute, but it is not the significant cause of crime in the society. Rather, there are complex and many other phenomena such as social injustice, weak judicial system, socio-economic factors, peer pressure influence, amongst many others. Poverty is not the significant cause of crime in the society, and simplifying all this cause to poverty alone overlooks other critical influences. The chairman, panel of impartial educators, members of the House, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, humbly standing before is Ndam Jacob from the Government Model Secondary School Ndam, the lead speaker in the negating team. Here to redeem the points I have to negate the proposition. This House believes that poverty is the root cause of crime in the society. But before I do justice to the motion at hand, permit me to explain the key terms in this proposition. Poverty is a state of being where one lacks the basic essential necessities of life, such as food, clothing, and shelter. Crime, on the other hand, is an activity or an action that goes against the rules and norms of a society and is punishable by law. Society is the group of people that live together and share common views, aspirations, as well as interests. We, the negating constructive team, have 16 strong, vibrant, crucial and important points to lay before this honorable house of great intellectuals. As the late speaker, will be extensively deliberating on the first 6. My first supporter will exclusively deliberate on the next 5, while my debunker will take the last 5 points, and she will at the same time debunk, refute, counteract, and condemn erroneous, baseless, and infactual concepts, which I'm very sure my opponents must raise in the cause of this argument. She is going to do that by providing this honorable house with statistics, scenarios, examples, references, as well as valid points to back up our claim. Poverty is not the root cause of crime in the society because of the following valid points. To start with, peer pressure influence. Peer pressure influence today is one of the major significant determinants of crime in the society. All of us seated here will bear me witness that most of our youth today in this country try to displease themselves in order to please the peers they associate with. As such, the possibility and tendency of them learning, emulating, and of course inculcating the bad habits their peers possess is high. Do this have anything to do with poverty? Research and statistics show that Nigerian institutions account for over 90% rate of cultism in the world. Most of our undergraduates today in the tertiary institution are cultists, therefore engaging in crime. Do this have anything to do with poverty? The weak judicial system in other countries around the world calls for attention. The judiciary in Nigeria is nothing to talk about. Their inability to dispense justice as it is, not as the selfish politicians want it, is low. The 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria provides that a criminal case should not exceed 6 months in the court. However, the verse is and still remains the case. The issue of Evans Chukwudi, a notorious kidnapper who was arrested and his arrest was linked to over 10 high-profile kidnapping, is getting to its 7th year and no final verdict has been passed. Evans single-handedly confessed that he indulged into kidnapping not because he is poor, but because he wants to live a luxurious life. Is this not greed? And does this have anything to do with poverty? I am sure my opponents will come and argue that poverty is the root cause of crime in the society. However, that is not true. Most of the people that commit crime today in Nigeria are not poor. The case of the suspended Minister for Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Dr. Beta Edu, is a clear example to this fact. She is said to have diverted 585.2 million naira to a private account number. Was this woman poor? Another example was the case of the former CBN governor Godwin Emefiele, who was arrested over corruption scandal and misappropriation.
Please. You said crimes in Nigeria are due to socio-economic factors, cultism, and peer influence. But don't you think ignoring poverty exacerbates crime, even if other factors contribute? Address the House.
Members of the House, poverty is not the significant cause of crime in the society. We all seated here know that a poor man can never afford to engage himself in crime. We all seated here know that a child from a family where kidnapping, banditry, and armed robbery is the order of the day definitely shall also be a kidnapper, an armed robber, and also a bandit. Like I was saying, Godwin Emefiele was arrested over corruption scandal and money misappropriation in the Central Bank of Nigeria. Was this man poor? The poor and political instability in other countries today around the world also calls for attention. The citizens of Niger have been exposed to harsh weather of political tyranny that make them to migrate and leave their countries. They went to other countries as refugees, and in a scenario whereby their host countries rejected them, definitely they will see crime as the only source of livelihood and also a payback for being rejected. Does this have anything to do with poverty? The foundation parents lay at home to their children matters. You can never expect a child from a family where raping is the order and main business of the day not to be a rapist. Members of the House, religious fundamentalism and the imposition of strong beliefs in our community today should not be overemphasized. The Boko Haram are responsible for more than 30,000 deaths and the displacement of more than 2 million Nigerian girls, like the abducted Chibok secondary school girls and Dabchi. These people are not poor, but yet are the ones engaging in crime. Distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, I strongly believe with this, I've been able to convince all of us beyond any reasonable doubt. I strongly believe I've been able to clear the doubts off our minds that poverty is not the root cause of crime in the society. Therefore, the motion this House believes that poverty is the root cause of crime in the society must fall and is totally not agreed to by the negating constructive team. Thanks, and believe this valid truth. Proud to oppose. Back to the podium, Mr. Ndam Jacob, the lead speaker in the negating team from the Government Model Secondary School, Ndam, Plateau State, here to give a brief and concise version of what my teammates and I have earlier presented. Members of the House, most of the team proposition argument is in favor of negating this topic. They made mention of points like unemployment, cultism, corruption, poor educational system, and many others, which are the factors that contribute to crime apart from poverty. 3 points of information were raised. 2 were not answered very well. Even one that was answered is a very big lie. The speaker said Lagos State reported in 1st January 2020, but that wasn't it. Lagos State government reported on the 15th of October 2017 through the Punch newspapers. Does it mean we are here to lie? Another thing to note is that the proposition team are using their phones to browse point of information. They are using their phone to browse their reply speech to come and lay before this honorable House. Is this among the technicalities of our debate? Members of the House, my opponents mentioned that kidnapping, Armed robbery and corruption are the major source of crime in the society. That means they are supporting the negating team. Welcome to the oppositing team. Members of the House, I, as the lead speaker in the opposition team, have successfully deliberated on 6 points, which are lack of employment opportunities, peer pressure influence, weak judicial system, breakdown of societal norms and values, religious fundamentalism and extremism of the imposition of cultural beliefs, amongst many others. My first supporter has also succeeded in extensively, exclusively, and also well calibrating on 4 points, which are psychological factors, crime exists in wealthy backgrounds, unemployment, and the media, which today in Nigeria refer to crime as a major source of fun, as a major source that is not driven from poverty. Again, my debunker, after debunking, after rebuting and counteracting the erroneous and baseless points that was raised by my opponent, also exclusively deliberated on 5 points, which are political corruption, cybercrime, violence, all theft and debunkery, and also drugs addiction. Members of the House, I strongly believe that with the points laid by the team opposition before this honorable House, we all are convinced, we all have been clear the doubts in our minds that poverty is not and will never be the root cause of crime in the society. Moreover, international organizations such as the United Nations and European Unions declare that poverty is not and it will never be the root cause of crime in the society. Panel of impartial educators, members of the House, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we, the opposition team, have successfully put smile on all our faces, as even my opponents and the judges are nodding their head in affirmation that poverty is not and it will never be the root cause of crime in the society. Therefore, the motion, this House believes that poverty is the root cause of crime in the society, must fall. Thanks, I'm proud to oppose.
Judge C equally Plateau State. So it means that we had unanimous decision. And with this, we declare Team Plateau the winners of this first edition of 2024 e-debate competition. Thank you very much.
Stand up for the champions, for the champions. Stand up for the champions, for the champions. Stand up